A man may work from sun to sun, but a woman's work is never done. I heard this in a TED Talk by Regina F. Clark, and it really struck a chord. This holiday season, I noticed a theme. The discourse with women around the holidays being that they were feeling an unequal burden of the responsibility for it all. Expectations to provide and perform, the assumption that the holiday burden was theirs to bear. It made me think of one of my favorite SNL skits. It's the one about the Christmas robe. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to link it. It's the one where everyone in the family lists off all of the amazing gifts that they've gotten for Christmas. And Mom got a robe. And her stocking is empty. And while it does sound rather depressing, it is also pretty funny because for most of us, it's extremely relatable. I'll also link that Regina F. Clark's TED Talk here because she does a really amazing and quite funny job of demystifying the myth about women's work. What is women's work? Even though most of us in this day and age don't believe that there is work that is for men and work that is for women, that we don't believe that the work and the duties are divided by gender, most of us still have it in there lingering. And many of us are still playing it out as if we're responsible for it or feeling bound to it and like we don't know what to do to get out from underneath it. So today, that's what we're here to talk about. I'm Ashley McCann, and this is In Our Skin. I've been working as a therapist, a coach, and a yoga teacher for over 16 years. From helping people overcome blocks to healing traumas longstanding, I have learned a lot, and I've done a lot of work myself. I'm here to share what I can with you because we all need a space to learn what we haven't been taught and to know that we are not alone on this journey. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. As I started to dig into this subject, what I found is that the statistics are showing us that the world is not changing in line with our beliefs. That while men and women both report that they believe in gender equality and sharing the labor of the household, it's not what's actually happening. What we're seeing is that 75% of unpaid work is done by women. That women are doing 2/3 of the work to care for the home and the family, regardless of their employment status, their other work, or how much money they make. What we're seeing is that the changes in what is actually happening in the household and in our workplaces is not shifting significantly, despite the progress that we often think we have made. Although shifts in the American economy, culture, and belief system have disrupted many of those traditional gender norms and roles, the disparities between men and women truly remain. It's extremely pervasive. There's literally no evidence that the gender gaps have narrowed in any significant way in recent years. There were some positive shifts that occurred with the pandemic when it came to dads spending quality time with their kids, for example. But when it comes to these roles and responsibilities, we have a lot of work to do. When it comes to the unpaid labor at home and at work, we have a lot of progress yet to make. While I did find much of this surprising, I do still know the lived experiences of the women that I work with and the women in my life. For many, there is truly a need for a shift and change because these are the things that are wearing on our mental health and our physical health, and we can begin to change them. What I know is that this isn't going to change until we wake up and we see what we're missing. So today, we're going to talk about the invisible work of women so that we can begin to take what is invisible and bring it into sight. Because the reality is, everyone can see what is happening. It's just not being acknowledged. From early adulthood through old age, women in the United States consistently spend more time than men doing household work, taking care of children, and the essential day-to-day responsibilities. And you might be surprised to learn that this happens regardless of marital status. It does not matter if someone is single. It does not matter if they are married, and it doesn't matter if you have children. The disparities exist across the board regardless. Here's an example of what research is finding. In an average week, women spend over 12 hours cooking, cleaning, and doing other types of housework in comparison with men who spend half of that. Women also spend twice as much time as men taking care of children. Combined, women spend more than twice as much time as men doing both household work and taking care of kids. And this doesn't actually stop in the home. We see it in the workplace as well. So I'm going to bring us back to that. There are a lot of names and terms for this phenomena. Some refer to it as the mental load or emotional labor. Others refer to it as the second shift or invisible work. Regardless of what you call it, women are doing it. They're taking it on and they're suffering under it. And likely without recognizing it, men are expecting it. It's subconscious for most, but it's still there. This is why we are talking about this today, so that we can begin to shift these dynamics. The term invisible work was coined by sociologist Arlene Kaplan Daniels back in '86. She brought focus to the work of life that tends to disappear from our view, the things that we aren't looking at. It's what others are avoiding acknowledging, what they're choosing not to see, and it might even be what we're avoiding, fearful that it can't change or that it would rock the boat. Regardless, it's going unrecognized. Kaplan Daniels highlighted the difference between work that is valued and paid for and the work that is considered women's work, typically devalued or unpaid. So, what's women's work? Even if we have shifted our views of gender roles in our world, many of us could quickly list what would be considered women's work, and we can recognize, likely, that it is still considered women's work today. While we might not want to adopt those as our beliefs, maybe we don't want to accept that there is work that is for women, we might also still be playing into this by executing those tasks ourselves. We still know what women's work is. And what's keeping it invisible is that we're not acknowledging that this still exists, that it's still in our cultural psyche. The unequal division of unpaid labor in the home begins as soon as women enter adulthood. Women 18 to 24 spend about twice as much the amount of time on household work as men their age. They do 8 hours of household work per week compared to just 3.8 for men. As people enter their mid-20s, the time that women spend on combined household and family responsibilities significantly increases. Amongst Americans 25 to 34, women do over 2 times as much of the household work and almost 3 times as much of the child care as men. This happens both in the home and in the workplace. When it comes to heterosexual relationships, women are carrying the cognitive labor, says Professor of Sociology Alison Daminger. In her research, she found the differential is significant. Women are doing 80% of what she refers to as the cognitive labor. I love what her research examined and what she discovered about just what it is that women do. It's something that I think you'll relate to. She found that women do these 4 things. They anticipate needs, they identify options for filling them, they make the decisions, and they monitor the progress. So what does this look like in action? Here's an example. Let's say that in a household, meal prep is divvied up. The guy's cooking on Tuesday. Even though he's doing the cooking, it is highly likely based on this research that while he is doing the cooking, he is relying on his partner to do the planning, to choose the meal, to buy the groceries. In other words, to be responsible for the cognitive load, for those details that allow this to come together. And if there's kids involved, it's also highly likely that the woman is considering the preferences, the dietary needs, and all that is involved in putting this plan together. Or, for example, let's say the dad is driving a kid to a school event. That is contributing, and he's right to feel that. But what is often missed is that the woman is likely to have volunteered for the event, to have prepared food for the event, to have bought or made the costume, to have purchased and wrapped a teacher gift, to put it all in the car before he pulls out of the driveway. Because the research is showing us that these are the things that women do, the things that men neglect to see. And as a result, women are carrying the burden of care in the household. If kids are involved, even if they work full-time, even if they make more money, these patterns play out even when couples believe that they have progressive views about gender equality. This is happening even when men believe that the distribution of household work is even. Men say they want it even, they tend to believe that it's even, and the reality is that in most households, it's not even close. About 91% of women with children spend at least an hour a day on housework, compared with only 30% of men with children. Eve Rodsky, author of Fair Play, says, "We're not asking the right questions." Because if you ask who does the childcare or who does the groceries, couples will often answer both of us. But what we're not going to see, she says, is that invisible work, that the conception, the planning that goes into those tasks that's behind the scenes is done by women. That men and society, she says, focus on execution, whereas the conception and the planning are truly invisible. And this is validated in Davinger's research on cognitive labor. I do want to point out here that there is research that shows that in same-sex relationships, the division is more equal. The balance is more equal. In hetero relationships, the imbalance comes with costs. The mental, physical, and emotional load of motherhood is a burden that goes unnoticed, unacknowledged, and is even expected. Mom can become very quickly and easily in a household the default and de facto responsible parent. The default parent is the one that will take on a disproportionate amount of the labor in the home. This is the person who will get the emails from school, who will coordinate the play dates, who will make the doctor's appointments, who's expected to make the list, to manage the cleaning, the laundry, the groceries, to keep the teepee stocked, and who will take care of the care, the emotional side of parenting. And when men do these things, they believe they are helping the woman, as if taking her burden from her. Women then find themselves feeling unappreciated, anxious, depressed, and resentful. Studies have shown that mothers who shoulder more cognitive labor experience higher levels of depression, stress, and burnout. We all know the social expectations for how a house should be run, how it should look. If you are a parent, you know the expectations for being a good parent, for being a good mother, what it means, what you're supposed to do for your children, regardless of your career or your job responsibilities. Simply being a woman is linked to spending more time on unpaid childcare and household work and having less free time, even when controlling for age, income, race, ethnicity, and marital status. So women, regardless of their stage of life, regardless of how much they earn, spend more time on the invisible work and have less time for themselves. The Gender Equity Policy Institute examined this free time gender gap. Across every group studied, men spend more time socializing, relaxing, and having fun than women on average. Women have 20% less free time than men. Mothers have 17% less free time than fathers, and these differences exist among single people as well. The researchers found that the free time gender gap adds up quickly. The group with the least amount of free time is women 35 to 44. Men their age have a full hour per day more of free time, and the free time gender gap is near its peak at this point in life. Women in that range, 35 to 44 years old, have 23% less free time than men their age. Working women spend 2 times as many hours per week as working men on childcare and household work combined. Among Latinos, mothers spend almost 3.5 as much time as fathers taking care of children and doing household work. And this gender time gap explains something that wasn't coming through clearly in the research. Because as we are talking about these concepts of women's work and invisible work, it made me wonder about the things that we deem men's work in the home. We all know those stereotypical jobs, the things that men take on at home. But when we're looking at this gender time gap, what we're seeing is that regardless of what men are doing at home, women are getting less free time and spending more time on the work that could be shared as a household. That even if men are spending time doing work that perhaps women are not spending time on in the home, they are still getting more free time each week. And there are economic consequences that come with this. According to the Institute for Women's Policy Research, additional time spent on household and care work was associated with a decrease in women's weekly earnings, even when controlling for other factors. In other words, time inequality itself reinforces and perpetuates gender inequality, our earning ability. What this means for women is that they are doing 3/4 of the world's unpaid work, an average of 11 billion hours a day globally. Women are undertaking 3 times more of the care of the homework, the domestic work, than men. And while this is so pronounced in our country, this is even more pronounced in low and middle income countries around the world. And as I said earlier, it's not limited to the household. It follows women into the workplace. Here, studies show that women provide more of the office housework, tasks that are stereotypically the things that women are considered to be better at. These are also the things that are associated with low promotability. And when it comes to those promotions, the expectations are different for men than women. Men typically need to be seen as confident and competent. And for women, they need not only to be seen as confident and competent, but also considerate and compassionate. What research has found is that in the workplace, women are expected to do things like provide emotional support, conflict resolution, mentorship and guidance, office organization and planning, communication, coordination, building relationships, and nurturing team dynamics. These are not necessarily the things that women are paid to do. These are then taking away from the things that women are supposed to be doing with their time, the things that make them money, and the things that get them those promotions. A 2022 study from NYU showed that these are the things that can keep women out of leadership roles. They said, and I quote, "We're draining powerful women's time and resources without equitable rewards and making it difficult for women to legitimize their power." Women leaders are taking on extra work, and they're not getting recognized or rewarded for it. When women take on this office housework, they are not able to do the necessary tasks that benefit them, but they are doing the tasks that are benefiting companies. The companies benefit, the women don't advance. That was the main finding from a Women in the Workplace report that was conducted by leanin.org. The report surveyed more than 400 companies and more than 65,000 employees in professional jobs from entry level to the C-suite. They found that women showed up as better leaders. Compared to men in similar roles, women who were managing were more likely to help employees navigate work-life challenges, to ensure that workloads were manageable, and to provide support. And while it can be seen that these strategies, these strengths, and these measures are effective and supportive, these easily become the tasks that actually further set women back, because they are taking away from the things that women will get recognized for, the work that they're paid to do. So while we are seeing that the work that these women are doing is effective, it is still undervalued and uncompensated. And it can actually set women further back because it is taking time away from the things they will be recognized for and promoted for. The invisible labor and the office housework show us the reluctance to value the work of women. Members of traditionally marginalized groups are also more likely to do this undervalued work and to be burdened by it. This unpaid work that is getting unrecognized. And if I've said it once, I'll say it twice. There are consequences for all of us in these dynamics. In that massive survey, more than half of the women leaders who managed teams said that they felt burnt out at work often or almost always, and almost 40% of them were contemplating moving to part-time or leaving the workforce entirely. And not only are women not being compensated for additional emotional labor, most of the time they aren't even recognized for it. And paradoxically, they might even be penalized if they eschew it. The gender wage gap continues to show us that female-dominated professions receive lower pay, so work that's considered women's work is devalued even when it's compensated for. We clearly need more progress and change in gender equity. All of these factors are obviously negatively impacting women, because while most of us are just gritting our teeth and burying it, the impacts are building and they do have an effect. Women who are experiencing this kind of stress have been researched to be found to have higher levels of cortisol, as we would assume, and slower recovery of cortisol than women who report low stress. That cognitive load, the emotional burden, and the lack of free time and respite to reset lead to physical and emotional distress, depression, and anxiety. The invisible workload is associated with greater mental health burden and negative effects on our quality of life. We all know what this looks like. This leads to resentment, to overwhelm, what some call mom rage. We end up with strained relationships and marital problems. The strain of holding all the household responsibility, the mental and emotional labor, weighs heavily on our relationships. What we have found is that the uneven allocation of the workload leads women to experience diminished satisfaction in their partnerships. And I'm going to remind you of the episode on resentment here, because, man, isn't that what's happening? And if it's not resentment, it might be self-loathing or self-blame. You might actually still believe that you should be able to do it all. That is not uncommon. You might not feel like you even have time to point fingers because you are just getting burnt out. And do you remember what we talked about in that burnout episode with Kate? These patterns did not start today. For most of us, these patterns have been playing out since we were young, and they've just shifted and changed over time. When we were young, we might have learned that we are supposed to be good girls and people please and put everyone before ourselves, and after years and years of doing that, we are burning out. That's what happens when we experience this level of pressure and strain without enough time to bounce back and without enough support and sharing in that load. So, what do? We cope, and not always in the best ways. Ask yourself what it is that you do when you're feeling overwhelmed. What is it that comes up for you? Many of us are prone to isolation. Others soothe with food. According to the National Institute of Health, women aren't just upping their drinking, they're increasingly drinking to cope. And this accelerates the risk of alcohol use disorder significantly, as well as the associated health issues. So why does this persist? If we're suffering, if we're feeling this way, why does this just keep happening without change? This is truly a question to consider for yourself. Why do you think that this persists not just in our world and in our culture, but maybe in our households? Why does it persist for us here and in our workplaces? I'd wager, and I can tell you from the work that I've done with so many women, that the societal expectations for women play a major role. We are socialized to do this, and it does keep us buying in. We don't want to be the one not doing it, and we've been acculturated to simply believe we should. Because aren't these the things that we've been trained to do since we were little? That we've been told define our worth and our enoughness, and the things that make us a good girl, that grow into being a good mom or a good partner or a good employee or a successful woman. So let me ask you this now. What do you want to define success for you? Really think about that. What do you really want for yourself? What do you really value? What do you really care about? The tricky thing is that it's probably a little bit of all of the things that you are doing that might be burning you out. I have these conversations with women all the time because we tend to be allowing ourselves to be measured by all of these things, even if we don't want to hold on to them. We don't need to be the one responsible solely for how our house looks when people come over. We don't need to be the only one who is solely responsible for our kids being successful in school. We don't need to maintain the disproportionate amount of responsibility for our kids' care. Remember, the women who are working just as much as men are still maintaining more of that care work. These are the things that can be shared. We don't need to be the only one doing the job of the invisible workload at work. But here's the thing. Even though women don't want to continue to perpetuate these things, there is a lot of fear that comes up when we consider trying to change it. Because it seems that if we let go of doing that one thing, everything will fall apart. There is so much pressure tied to this. Women feel like they have to hold it all together because if they don't do these things, they simply will not be done. And we've probably all had experiences of this. Here's the thing. If we keep doing it, we are training everyone around us to believe that we will. We are sending the message that we're okay with it. We are letting others maintain the expectation that we will take responsibility for it. So this doesn't have to look like letting go of all the responsibilities and quitting. This doesn't have to be all or nothing. But no one will start to step up and pitch in if we keep doing it without question. Judith Kohlberg presented a concept called radical delegation. Radical delegation isn't necessarily the woman doing the delegating again, as if it's her responsibility and her role. Nope, this is different. It's about women getting out of holding the responsibility and bringing it to others to share. Radical delegation is about getting it done, not by the person who seems best suited, the woman, but by anyone, because anyone can do it. So it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, poking at the outdated thinking that it's radical for men to do the laundry or vacuum or wash the dishes or bake the cupcakes. But they can do it just as well as women. And by the way, we know there are a lot of men out there doing these things, so please don't think I'm speaking about every man in the world as I am talking about these things. This concept of Kohlberg's is just reminding us that it's about getting it done because it needs to be done and not letting it fall on women because they are assumed to be naturally better at it. And I'd like to point out that it's not that we're actually just naturally better at it. It's just that it's practiced. We're good at it because we've been trained to do it since we were playing house as kids. We're good at it because a part of us wants to be good at it. We're good at it because we were told we should be good at it. And we've done it until we've gotten good at it. And men and boys can get good at it too. Believe me, I am way better at cleaning a toilet than my sons. But they are the ones cleaning their toilets each week. Even if it drives me a little crazy, even if they have to go back 3 times. Not my monkey, not my circus. And I will speak to my husband here for a second because I'm sure this episode is giving him a great deal of anxiety. This episode was not directed at you. We in our home have come a long way. It's not perfect, but it's better. It's improved. And I know that he'll need me to acknowledge that there are many things that men are doing out there that women might not be jumping to participate in similarly. I am still too short to shape our hedges, and I am very aware that he hates those hedges. I actually want to do it, but I'm going to need a longer extension cord or a better ladder. And next summer, I will contribute. But remember, when we look at the average amount of time that women are doing all this invisible work and how much free time they have, men are still coming out on top. So even if they're out there doing the things that we might consider old school, stereotypical men's work, and they're still spending less time doing the women who are working equal amounts and making the same, if not more, money than them. So, this might not be an exact description of your household, but what I want us all to do is step back and look at what are we building resentment around? What are we feeling burned out by? What are you feeling overwhelmed by? What would you like to have less responsibility for? What would you like to have shared? And then talk about it. So this isn't about vilifying men. It's about talking about the things we haven't been talking about. It's about waking up together to what needs to change for us all to be healthy and well. We're talking about acknowledging work, redistributing responsibility, and creating a more equitable balance at home. Everyone benefits from this. We're talking about finding the same things at work, in our relationships, in our friendships, every freaking place we go. Breaking the pattern of doing it all, assuming it all, and taking care of everyone. We're breaking the patterns of letting ourselves get overwhelmed by bearing the burden, carrying the stress, and finding ourselves depressed, overwhelmed, angry, anxious, and silently burning out. I am really glad to see people talking about these things in my social media feed. Sam Kelly is one person who really stands out. She's sharing some great stuff on Instagram, offering up steps to this process of making the invisible visible and relinquishing responsibility. Here's some of what I've taken from her suggestions, and also I'm going to link her account so you can check her out yourself. Instead of perpetuating the expectation that women will either do a task or ask for help for it, she says to set the expectation that everyone who can see it can notice it. That everyone shares in the responsibility of noticing, that it is not the woman's job to delegate. It is not her job to ensure that it is done by requesting help as if it is of her ownership. that we relinquish that ownership and responsibility and that we make it shared amongst all of the household. If you can see it, you can do it. And the expectation is that everyone practices this noticing. So you don't have to make the list and you don't have to be the one who's in charge of pointing it out. She also suggests that we stop asking for help with the housework, deconstructing the concept again that it is ours to be helped with, and shift the message from "can you help me" to "can you work with me." Make sure you head over to the show notes to check out all the people that I've been talking about here today, because there's a lot of really great info out there. The big idea? I want us to hit pause and notice where we are taking on expectations and responsibilities that are burning us out. To notice where we are staying silent, maybe where we're building those resentments. We might be showing up a little passive-aggressively, perhaps, and we might want to scream. To consider the one place where you want to start. This might not be the biggest, most important thing, but this is just the place that feels manageable to begin. That's the place where we start to pipe up, the place where we start to set down some of that burden and let someone else pick it up. I hope this helps you shine a light on the thing that you need to be seen, the thing that's been ignored, avoided, or not talked about. I hope this gets you a little more support. We do not need to burn it all down, friends. We just have to find a reasonable place to begin. Remember, we've been doing a lot of these things for a really long time, and it does take time to change. We might have a lot of beliefs wrapped around these patterns in our lives, and we might need the support of a therapist to get out from under it and move beyond it. That's the work I do, and there are a lot of therapists like me out there doing it. I really hope that you take this to heart so that you can start to reverse some of those impacts on your health, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I also want to give a shout out to the men and women and families who are already doing these things. To the friends who are helping friends, all of this is so much easier with support and community. And that's the idea. We don't need to do it alone, and we can't keep believing that we should. When it comes to support and community and connection, I am all for it. And so I'm really excited that we've got a few things coming up. This month, for our book club, we're going to be reading Group by Christy Tate. Christy is amazing. If you have not read this book, you are in for a treat. She shares her story, her struggles, her self-doubt so openly as she explores her potential for connection. I love her honesty. I love her vulnerability. She says the things that most of us think but don't say out loud. We're going to meet February 6th for the book club, and drumroll, Christy is going to be meeting us on the podcast next month. So you can bring your questions and comments, what you want to share with her, and we'll bring it into the podcast. Also, in just a few short weeks, we're going to begin the Yoga of Life training. I'm obviously very passionate about this training. I can't say enough for what this can do to make a difference in our lives. Do you want to feel stronger? Do you want to have more connection? Do you want to have new ways of coping? Do you want to have time for yourself? These are what it's about. We've built this training so that people can have their lives work around it. While everything is live, it is also recorded to come back to at your own pace as you need. We want this to be accessible. So if you have any curiosity at all or questions, set up a call. We're going to begin the first week of February. And for those of you who are looking for resources to cope, who might be looking for something to support you in the changes we're talking about today, I've got you. This month, I'm offering 20 days of practices. These are 20 days of 25-minute practices for 2025. And yes, I know it's cheesy, but it only costs $25. I'm offering everything from yoga and Pilates to writing groups and guided relaxation. It's a little bit of everything for your mind, body, soul. I'm really excited because it gives me the opportunity to share a lot of practices that I love that I don't often get to share with you all. So I hope you check it out. You can head to the show notes to get the links to all of the above, to get on the list for the book club, to set up a call for the teacher training, or to get signed up for that 2025 practice series. Thank you so much for being here. This has been In Our Skin. As always, it would be amazing if you would hit pause on life for 30 seconds to subscribe, to review, or to share with a friend. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time. Until next time, take care.
Did they have house ladies who do like all the work?
This isn't back then. I'm talking about present day.
I know.
Oh.
But like back then, would they have like like in movies and shows, in like Mary
Poppins?
Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
They would have house ladies.
Yeah, like Mary Poppins, she was a nanny.
I know, taking care of kids and doing the household work. And Mary Poppins, who would do like the cooking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Would any boys do that back then?
It tended to be women who were hired to do cooking and cleaning. That's what this whole thing's about. And still, in present day, it is assumed that women will do those things.
Stupid.
Stupid.